Time is just gone 19 minutes past 8 as we kick off this morning, focusing on what has been taking place in Bangladesh. Now, often we have leaders, and we see this right across the entire world, holding on to power. And these are just pure power hungry people, power mongering leaders. And they don't know when to stop, they don't know when to give up. We see this on the African continent. We see it in many other parts around the world. We've seen it even in India with the re-election of Narendra Modi, and also taking a look at Bangladesh. And also, if you look at Pakistan, the return of the Sharifs and the Zardaris and the Bhuttos. And at some point in time, something has got to give because as these leaders become more and more brutal, as they become more and more corrupt, these are recipes for disaster. This is a recipe for a revolution. And this is what we've seen in Bangladesh, where young people had decided that enough is enough. And this is the reason why we've seen Sheikh Hasina removed from power to the extent that she had to actually flee the country and go to India. But at the end of the day, the country still needs to run. And this is what we are talking about. We are talking about the interim government. And we're going across now to be joined in Bangladesh by none other than Dhaka-based activist and academic Rezaur Rahman Lenin. Rezaur Rahman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, wonderful that you're able to join us. And I made a brief reference to what has been taking place in Bangladesh over the years. And at some point in time, something had to give. And you couldn't have someone holding on to power and getting away with it election after election. And it got to a stage where particularly the young people in Bangladesh had had enough. And they had to do what they had to do, go out into the streets, protest, and force the prime minister to resign.
Yes. So the given situation is getting better after the mass uprising. As you know, that there are number of anomalies, number of rule of law situation actually created in Bangladesh, and it usually creates immediately after any uprising or revolution, whatever happened. But in Bangladesh, this interim government came into power, and we have to have a trust on them, certain extent, so that it can be gradually solve all the issues. But whatever the atrocity happened during this movement, almost 1,000 people actually being killed. Number of people are injured to the eyes, to their body parts, different parts of the body. And also police brutality and custodial torture is so huge during this revolutionary period, during this mass uprising. So therefore, we need to wait to see how these things can reconcile, whether it can be hardly with the judicial mechanism or whether it can be Truth and Reconciliation Commission like South Africa. It depends that how Bangladeshi peoples are wants to solve this issue. But obviously there are systematic crimes actually happened against the peoples of Bangladesh by the previous regime, and at the same time there are number of violent situations we have seen, extrajudicial killing, enforced disappearances, custodial torture, police brutality. Those are very common last 15 years in Bangladesh. People are documenting, rights organizations are working on it, victims' family are organized. So let's see, let's hope for the best at this point of time. But there are some constitutional questions as well. Legality of this interim government is at stake. and at the same time, the previous appointed president and the army chiefs appointment and number of top institutions within the military and also within the government. So those things are gradually replaced by other people. Forcefully, they are actually removed from the place. Obviously, legal questions and other things are still at stake. But then we actually still hope, because some of the people who are into interim government as an advisor, they are their victims. They are also working hard to get a justice for the victims. So obviously, these advisors should not turn themselves from victims to perpetrators' role. So that's the hope.
Yes, Rezaur, Rahman, I just like your thoughts on this interim government that has been set up now. We know the highly acclaimed Nobel Prize winning economist, Muhammad Yunus, has been sworn as the head of Bangladesh's interim government. But together with him, there are a number of people, including people like Nahid Islam, Asif Mahmood. These were top leaders of students against the discrimination group. Then you've got prominent human rights activists. You've got Abdul Rahman Khan, who was sentenced to 2 years by the Hasina government. And he also took oath of office as an advisor. Now, this is quite an interesting mix as far as the interim government is concerned. And in the short term, just your thoughts on the interim government and the people and the composition of this interim government, which is headed by Muhammad Yunus.
Yes, Professor Yunus is a very well-respected all-square to everywhere. As a Nobel Peace Prize winner, as an economist, as an introduction to the Grameen Bank, almost 120 countries are following his model of microcredit globally. Yes, he's highly respected, but at the same time, obviously, as you mentioned, number of human rights activists, number of enforced weapons family members, and they are respectively very much respected into their professions. They are here. That's the hope. But at the same time, state affairs is something very different. It's not a romantic idea. It's not a way. It's not a issue of romanticization. So obviously we have a hope, but at the same time we have a doubt. At the same time, whether they can actually solve these massive problems what we have, particularly the immediate rule of law situation, and minorities are under attack. Whoever actually did it, is it earlier government, Sheikh Hasina's men, or the people who are into power, or they are general criminals? That doesn't matter. But these are the rule of law need to be restored. Democratic principles, human rights principles need to be respected broadly through their work. I have a hope, but at the same time, this composition of number of victims and highly regarded individuals are there. We have still, as a citizens of Bangladesh and as a friends, almost out of 17, 10, 11 of our friends who are actually, we fought together to restoration of democracy and human rights. So, but then critical role is to mitigate the gap, reconcile the situation. There is a need to be a closer of this given violence. And to close this violence, it's not a reform is needed, not a revenge. And deep reform need to be worked on. A reconciliation need to be worked on, not the revenge. So I hope my friends who are in interim governments, and I hope that the people who are highly regarded, they will actually can perform into this regard.
Where does this leave Sheikh Hasina's Awami League Party? in Bangladesh and within the political landscape at this point in time when an interim government is in place?
Yes, that's also a big question because Sheikh Hasina's party did atrocity crimes in Bangladesh. Their party members were involved into that. That's for sure, 100% sure. But at the same time, they are considered as an opposition political party now. They are one of the largest political party along with Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP. So now the question is whether the good forces within the Awami League can be accommodated, can be brought into scene to have a representative democracy in Bangladesh. I mean, if it is not, then what would be the solution? What would be the opposition political party leaders? Whether Bangladeshi peoples are ready to accept that? We know that there is a good number of a good number of representations they used to have in Bangladesh, but at the same time, very much hatred, very much revengeful situation can be popped up in coming months, coming weeks, coming days. So we don't know, but at the same time, they are very much afraid. They are not into their own local areas. Their establishment, which actually being earned through corruption and violation of number of accountability and principles, those establishments are destroyed or even taken over. So I'll try to be actually more responsible into democracy and human rights. So those attempts are there, and these things are gradually worked on. But yesterday only they actually formed. So they need little time to even get into the pictures. And also, it's not very clear within 4 or 5 days that whether Awami League force can be restored their position. It takes time. Let's see. Because for well-represented democracy, their presence probably needed for global audience and global actors who are working behind the Bangladesh.
Well, Rezaur Rahman, I think what you mentioned is time is important as well. And looking at after all the death, all the destruction that had taken place, and also all the problems that are so deep rooted in Bangladesh, timing is absolutely critical. And I'm sure the people of Bangladesh have got high expectations. And looking at this interim government, it is clear it is not going to be an easy task to try and reverse what has been taking place for a very, very long time in Bangladesh. But again, the expectations will be there from the people of Bangladesh for this interim government to perform and to bring some sort of stability in the country.
Right. I think time and also space, and at the same time, the prudent act, all three things, I think, crucial at this stage.
Yes. Rezaur Rahman, just finally, looking at the position of Bangladesh at this point in time, and we know that we see it in many other countries where the security services are very, very powerful. The army is powerful. We see it in other countries. We see it in countries like Pakistan. We've seen it in Egypt. We see it in many, many other countries as well. And they are a major factor as well. And again, the key issue here is how well that relationship between the security apparatus, between the army and a civil government can actually come together. And I'm sure there will be a lot that will be said about that, but also at the same time, there will have to be compromises being made.
Yes, I mean, these are the factors. I think the relationship between civilian and military need to be restored, because this is the largest peacekeeping mission at the UN. Bangladesh is providing largest peacekeeping mission around the world. So, for sake of their own benefits, this army needs to be actually very much close and work with the peoples of Bangladesh, first people and citizens. But then, obviously, they have earlier practices are not really good. They have a 57 businesses industry in Bangladesh. So I am not sure that how and what process these trust and beautification of the relationship can be ensured in coming months. But we obviously need to work on. There are symptoms where army is very much willing, military particularly very much willing to cooperate with the peoples of Bangladesh. But that's also happened in Pakistan and also in Egypt. But at the end, they grab the power broadly in their own context. I hope that Bangladesh is not going to be the same path because of some international consideration need to be considered. So at this stage, is very much hopeful, but at the same time, we need to actually keep working on the accountability and transparency framework. And democratic principle need to be upheld with non-discriminatory way, with the principle of rule of law and proportionality principle, particularly legality and legitimate, and also proportionality principle, necessary and proportionality principle need to be upheld.
Well, let us watch the space and let us look at this interim government closely going forward in the short term. But for now, Rezaur Rahman, Jazakallah khairan so much. And we do appreciate you taking time out this morning with us right here on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Rezaur Rahman, Lenin joining us out of Bangladesh this morning with the Prime Yunus. And with that, we're going for a break. Next up, we'll be joined by Dr. Ibrahim Harvey. We are talking about Western powers and their role in fueling this genocide in Gaza.